Hey guys, Scott here. Thought I'd try something really quick to give like 20-second counters to every killer. I have not thought about this in advance. I'm just going to look at the killer and think about, if I'm playing the killer, what people would do to counter me, what perks they'd bring. This is just going to, I'm just basically just testing myself right here. So let's just go in order. Trapper. Things like small game, the perk small game, very good for finding traps. Probably the strongest thing you can bring though is a basic green map with red twine, I believe is the add-on that lets you see the killer's belongings, which is his bear traps, which is very, very strong. Additionally, you can just bring an iridescent map in general, which will just highlight basically everything. So if you're being chased by the trapper and you are using that map, you will be able to see every single trap that's in the area that you're being chased. It is insanely strong. You can even burn the add-ons to make the map last longer if you're worried about it going way too fast. Wraith. The reason Wraith is powerful is when people are injured, he can snowball very well. So the counter to that, first, obviously, there's Spine Chill for detecting if he's coming or not. But then there are also healing builds are very strong against Wraith. Because typically, Wraiths are going to do hit and run. They're going to hit you and then run away and then find you later when you're injured. Wraiths don't really chase because they have no chase power other than when it's a short loop and they can whip around it with Windstorm. But for the most part, they're going to try to hit you when you're injured. So if you've got botany knowledge and a med kit and desperate measures, even self-care, things like that, very, very strong against Wraith. A team of 4 med kits against Wraith will destroy him because they'll always be at full health and he can't use the thing that makes him very good. Hillbilly, you typically want to stay near windows and short round loops. Billy can't curve around really round loops, but he can curve around things like, TL walls and shack and things like that that are kind of like a straight corner. So those are a lot more dangerous against the good curve Billy. But typically you want to burn through vaults faster than you would on most killers here, because if you play the window, he might be forced to M1 you, which sort of neuters his main, one-shot power. And then you gain a bunch of distance to go somewhere else. He'll be able to catch up, but typically you want to burn through windows a bit faster against a Billy. Nurse, there's not much you can really do against a good nurse, because what a good nurse is going to do is wait for you to go out of line of sight, and then they're going to blink at the last place that they saw you, and then use their second blink to correct where they go. So Iron Wool can help a bit because the nurse can't see you anymore, so typically the first thing that happens is they hear where you are. If you have Iron Wool, it might make them pause another second, which can be very useful. But typically, you don't want to run back into the nurse. People say, go out of line of sight and then double back. It doesn't work against good nurses. That's just not going to happen. So what you actually want to do is run out of line of sight and maintain distance running away. Now, the direction you run can be variable. You can run, northwest, northeast, or something like that. You can mix that up. But typically, you always want to try to keep maintaining distance while staying out of line of sight. Don't double back into a good nurse. It's never going to work. If it's a bad nurse, sure. But that'll be something you determine as you're going against nurse. If they're missing a bunch of blinks, sure, try doubling back. Otherwise, always maintain distance. That's the most important thing you can do. It's really all you can do. For Myers, Spine Chill, again, very, very strong. Now, it's kind of not the same thing as Wraith because he can be 99 at tier 2 and still one-shot you. So even if you're always injured, or if you're always healthy, he can still actually down you. So it's not quite as useful to remain healthy against the Myers unless it's like an indoor map where you have no idea that they're coming. But I'd say Spine Chill is a pretty tried and true counter. Object of Obsession is even useful as well once he's out of tier 1 because he's got a very small tear radius, but you can't see him. That's also very useful. And I mean, Survive with Friends also counters the shit out of Myers too. So Hag, flashlights, super very, very, very good. When you begin using a flashlight, it highlights all nearby traps on the ground. So if you have a long battery flashlight, you can destroy a ton of traps. So if someone's on a hook, before you run up to the hook, click your flashlight once. If you see anything orange light up on the ground, hold your flashlight on it. It'll burn it out. And then she has no power with that. So flashlight's super, super strong. Even firecrackers and flashbangs work against this as well. And even if you want to not have to deal with that, you can bring Urban Evasion to crouch over the traps at a much faster speed. Very useful for when you're going for unhooks and things like that. Doctor is kind of interesting because you can't really loop a Doctor at short loops. At like jungle gyms and things like that, you can try doing it for a little while. But typically with Doctor, you want to drop pallets early and then maintain distance. Because if you're at a short like junk loop or something like that, he's going to eventually hit you if you stay there. That's kind of how Doctor works. He's going to shock you, get closer and closer. It might take him 30 seconds, but he will hit you. So typically, if the map permits it, you want to drop a pallet early, which creates a shit ton of distance around you, effective distance, because he has to go around it or kick it, and then keep running pretty much straight away as far as you can to another loop. That's probably the best way that you can do it. Any means necessary is also funny against Doctor, because typically he's not going to actually kick a lot of pallets in that scenario, so you get some value out of that. Huntress, you don't want to use windows that have a straight line of sight to them. Things like Shack are very, very bad against Huntress, so you don't really even want to go to Shack or drop pallets early. Dropping pallets early is one of the strongest things you can do against Huntress, because If you drop a pallet early while she's out of line of sight, it makes it so she can't do her 50-50, is she going to pull out a hatchet or not? So you don't even have to play that game. You might get one less loop out of it and lose 10 seconds, but it's pure safety. So dropping pallets early against Huntress is very, very strong. But, I mean, obviously only do it when she's chasing you. Don't just if you hear a lullaby, drop the pallet. If she's chasing you, drop it just when she's out of line of sight. She won't be able to do her 50-50 on you. Very, very strong. Additionally, small, tall, like rock loops. You can be greedy and run around a lot because if he pulls out the hatchet once, you gain an entirely additional loop. And even if she doesn't, she's still slow enough to the point where you're going to gain a lot of distance. So Bubba, windows are his huge counter by far. Kind of the same thing as Hillbilly. You don't want to be greedy against Bubba. He's not, 2018 Bubba anymore. He can actually down you at a lot of loops if you are greedy with the pallet. So you want to stick near windows, drop pallets, even if you think he's not going to be able to get there. You don't know if he's got chili or not. He might actually be able to get you. Don't be afraid to drop pallets, even if you think you can get around another time. Just don't risk it. Windows, like I said, are very strong against him. If you can force him to M1 you, well, he's not much of a killer at that point. So stick near windows, very, very important. Freddy, kind of not much counter-wise. It's just sort of the same thing as Doctor. If he's going to put a bunch of traps around a loop, you kind of want to drop a pallet early, or maybe even get a stun on him and just sort of try to make distance as much as you can, because you can't really loop a Freddy. You can, it's just going to take, a decent amount of time, but he will eventually hit you. So that is not a bad idea. Additionally, something really funny you can do is bring Repressed Alliance. A lot of Freddys will hook somebody, teleport to a gen, and pop it. If you Repressed Alliance when he begins teleporting or after he's there, you can completely deny his perk, which is a lot of game delay lost for him. So Repressed Alliance against Freddy can be actually very, very good. Pig, I mean, yeah, it's fucking Pig. Spine Chill, I guess. I don't know what the fuck's Pig gonna do. I feel like I don't even have to list counters for some of the weaker killers. I'm trying to think if there's anything special against Pig. Not really. No. Just get lucky with your traps, Forehead. Clown, sort of the same thing as Freddy and Doctor, where if it's a short loop, you can't really loop him. But if you're at, like, a jungle gym or something, you can still take medium vaults and get to the other side. Typically, you'll just get about one less loop than normal against Clown. But you can still basically loop a Clown as normal on jungle gyms and Shack and things like that. If you're at short loops, though, you really want to try to stun him or just drop the pallet early and then maintain distance somewhere else, because his power is meant to eventually hit you at those short loops. Spirit, you want to bring Lucky Break and Iron Will. Very, very strong against even amazing spirits. Iron Will is annoying enough as Spirit, but it's not, foolproof. I can still hear grass and things like that. So it's not a guarantee. But if you combine that with Lucky Break, it makes it very hard to get that second hit. And if you also bring that with like healing perks and self-care or a med kit and get multiple uses out of that Lucky Break per match, it can be devastating to even a very good Spirit, because you just basically have no stimulus of where the person went. And that can be very, very strong. Other than that, you're pretty much just dropping pallets and guessing. So if you can make the Spirit have to also guess as well, then that's probably the best thing that you can do. Legion, very simple. Just spread out. Don't be near each other. That's basically it. If Legion is beginning the chase on you and he's in Frenzy or she's in Frenzy and you are at a pallet, typically you don't want to drop the pallet early because they'll just vault over it and hit you. So what I do is play Legion Chicken, where you basically just sit at the end of the pallet and just stare at them. They'll respect it for a bit, and they might even come in and swing at you. And even if they hit you, you drop the pallet. Cancels their power. They can't snowball to anything, even if your teammates are right there. It just neuters his power. Yeah, it'll use the pallet, but you're not in any danger. You've used the pallet, wasted his entire power until it cools down again. It's pretty easy to counter Legion if you just sit at the pallet and just essentially camp it until he eventually hits you, or I've seen Legions respect the pallet for like 10 seconds and then they just lose their power. Additionally, if you want to be cheeky, you can try sitting at the pallet, running away from it, and then vacuuming back to it with spacebar while not holding shift. You might actually be able to get a stun there too. But it's typically as soon as you drop the pallet, you sort of lost, because now the Legion is not going to get stunned. They're going to keep their power, and then they can keep going other places. If you just sit in the pallet, you can't not stun them. So that's a very good idea. Plague, if you have a good team, collectively not healing is a very smart choice until the end game, in which case then you want to start cleansing. But if you do not have a team, it can be a bit more risky to actually be in that state. So it really depends on the team that you're going with. I will say a couple of things that are good against Plague are things that combat slugging. So things like We're Gonna Live Forever, Unbreakable are very strong against Plague, because Plague typically wants to make as much value out of her Corrupt Purge as possible, and she's going to slug to do that. So perks that combat slugging are very, very strong against Plague as well. Obviously, healing perks are useless against her, so don't even bother with that. No Mither, sometimes ironically pretty fun. Ghostface, basically same thing as Myers. I don't really have any other information there. It's Spine Chill, very useful. Try to have line of sight of, possible places that they can come. You want to reveal him. You want him to be in the center of your character screen, not your camera. So you want him aligned with basically the top of your character's head. Demogorgon, you don't want to play things that are normally strong, like Shack, Jungle Gyms. Demogorgon's very good at that kind of thing. Typically, you just don't want to give Demogorgon a straight line of sight. Perfect example is like a TL wall, whereas normally you'd want to, play the windows and go window to window, window, window until they're all blocked. Against Demogorgon, you might actually want to just simply run around one of the walls. You'll eventually get hit, but it's much safer, and the demo can't really use his power there, so you'll waste a lot more of his time doing that. For Oni, play extremely safe at the beginning of the match. And it doesn't matter if you use every pallet in the game before he gets his power. As long as you can prevent him from getting that first power before 3 gens pop, then you've pretty much won. So playing very safe against Oni is by far the best thing you can do. Even if you think you can get another loop out of it, don't risk it. Don't risk any mind games that he could possibly do. Don't risk any moonwalking. Just play extremely boring and safe. Drop palace early. Use the resources of the map while he has no power, and that's by far the way to neuter Oni. Deathslinger, you're not really going to dodge his shots, so what you just want to do is just run forward as much as possible and keep looking behind you and making sure that there's stuff in the way. Don't really even bother like dancing left and right. Like, it doesn't matter. If the Deathslinger has good aim, they're going to hit you if they have line of sight of you. So every time that you're just making a guess he's going to shoot, you're losing distance. So you want to abuse the fact that he's slower, put as much shit in between you and him as possible, and just hold W as long as you can. That's by far the best thing you can do. Additionally, once you're actually injured against a Deathslinger, dropping pallets early against him is useful because typically he's not going to be able to do it, shoot it, and then like drag you around the entire pallet. It depends on the loop. But things like jungle gyms and stuff like that, yeah, drop the pallet early. It doesn't matter if he shoots you. You're not actually going to go down. For Pyramid Head, kind of the same thing as Huntress. The reverse vacuum pallet drop is very useful. So typically Pyramid Head is going to, put his Rice of Judgment in the ground when you get to a pallet, and he's going to like kind of stop at the pallet for a minute just to see what you do. If you keep running, he'll just go through the pallet and then cancel his power and then just M1 you. So one of the best things you can do is feign running. Like, you can pause at the pallet, so he kind of hesitates for a second. Then you run past the pallet a little bit, so he starts actually walking towards it, and then you press spacebar to vacuum back and stun him. It's probably the safest thing you can do. Now, if he respects the pallet so hard that even that wouldn't stun him, then you should just be running around the loop again. And you can use that loop many, many times against Pyramid Heads that overcommit to their power because they're just going to, keep getting slowed down as they're doing that. So you have to feel out the player for sure. Blight, structures that are normally strong, like, Shack and things like that, are not super strong against Blight. You typically want to go to short, rounded loops. Kind of the same thing as like Hillbilly to some extent. Also loops that have nothing in the area for him to bounce off of to get an angle. You really just have to think like a pinball. You have to be thinking constantly about what is around him and what he can use to bounce off of. If there's like a small little rock that, he's probably not going to be able to even flick around, depending on the size. Once he's in his charge, it's a good idea to like hide behind these types of things, but you really have to feel out what type of tile that you're at. It's kind of hard to give a guide. I'd have to go over every single tile in the game, which I don't have time for in this short video. So, yeah, a bit half-assed one for Blight, but I think it's too complicated there. For twins, buddying up is very good. If you have, 2 and 2, even if Victor downs one of them, Charlotte's less to come over there and actually pick you up. Additionally, perks that counter slugging are very, very strong against twins. So again, Unbreakable, and We're Gonna Live Forever, super strong against, like Botany Knowledge, We're Gonna Live Forever, Unbreakable is like a twins counter build because there's going to be a lot of slugging. And if you're with a friend and Victor downs one person, then the friend is going to kick Victor. And if he has We're Gonna Live Forever and Botany Knowledge, he's going to pick you up before Charlotte can even get there. Staying healthy against Victor and Charlotte are by far the best things you can do. But if you are injured and you need to rush out a gen or something like that, staying with a buddy to ensure that he can't snowball and having perks that help with slugging are very useful against twins. Trickster, basically the same thing as Deathslinger. He's just sort of less intimidating at the moment until he gets buffed. Just, you're not going to dodge his shit. He's just throwing too many, and it's just, you're going to end up losing distance if you try to dodge. So you just want to make as much distance as possible, put stuff in between you, and it's going to be a lot harder when he gets buffed, but for now, that is by far the strongest thing you can do. Nemesis is sort of the same thing as Pyramid Head, actually. He's pretty much identical to Pyramid Head counterplay. The one thing you can do is if you drop a pallet and he's got his tentacle out, you can try some of the pallets you can actually crouch on, and it'll prioritize the pallet over you. So if you drop a pallet and you don't get a stun, try crouching and going to the raised side of it as much as possible, and hopefully you'll get the priority where it breaks the pallet instead. Other than that, you pretty much counter him sort of the same way as Pyramid Head. Anyway, that's it. I just wanted to do this really quick without giving it any pre-thought. I hope it was useful. Bye.